Look around you and look at the modern world, because everywhere you look right now, men are screaming for respect while they posture, chase status, flash money they don't truly own, and play psychological games with women just to feel a fleeting sense of power over their surroundings. They call it being alpha, leadership, or dominance. But if you strip away the loud voices, the expensive clothes, and the internet aesthetics, you actually see the terrifying, quiet panic of a boy who simply does not trust himself to sit still in an empty room. Most men completely misunderstand the very nature of dominance, because the moment they hear that word, their minds fly outward toward controlling the room, making a woman submit, and forcing people to respect them. They are completely obsessed with building power over the external world, and because that is where their focus lies, most men lose the battle before it even begins. The man who is obsessed with dominating the outside world is almost always the man who cannot dominate himself. His sudden urges, his knee-jerk reactions, his desperate need for validation, or his blinding lust. He has absolutely no authority over the little boy inside of him that is begging to be chosen. So because he is a slave inside his own mind, he tries to become a master outside of it through volume, pressure, jealousy, manipulation, control, anger, and coldness. But that is not power, my brothers. That is insecurity wearing heavy armor, because a tyrant is not a powerful man, but a terrified creature who needs a woman to behave perfectly, just so he can feel strong since he has no inner kingdom. True masculine dominance is never about crushing others. It is about conquering the chaos inside your own skin through self-command and the long descent into your own dark spaces to confront your greed, your fear, your weakness, and your addiction to comfort. This is where the real war is fought, not out there in the streets or in the arguments, but right here in the absolute silence of your own soul. Let's speak truth about relationships, because men constantly complain about modern women and vent their frustrations on forums, claiming women are the reason they are distracted, broke, or emotionally broken. But a man doesn't lose himself to a woman because she is inherently evil. He loses himself because he possesses no command over his internal world, meaning the woman does not create your weakness, but simply becomes the mirror that exposes where you lack sovereignty. If you secretly crave her constant approval to feel like a man, she will withdraw it, and your fragile confidence will shatter. If you are terrified of her leaving you, her distance will cause you to panic and scramble. If you are utterly addicted to her beauty, she will realize she owns you, and your leadership will vanish. If you are using physical intimacy and sex just to regulate your anxious nervous system, because you don't know how to calm yourself down, she will feel that heavy, suffocating need, and she will pull away from you. Men hate this truth because they want the mirror to show a flawless king. But the mirror only reflects reality, proving that she is simply the mechanism revealing where you are still an unfree slave. This does not mean you tolerate chaos, accept disrespect, or become a passive, spineless monk who lets people walk all over him. Because this path is about becoming so internally governed and anchored in your own center that your nervous system can no longer be hijacked by anyone else's mood. A truly powerful man has boundaries that he doesn't need to perform, announce 10 times a day on social media, or write long emotional text messages to explain, because he simply lives from his standard, and if that standard is breached, he moves accordingly. A weak man screams and demands respect, while a strong man says absolutely nothing and simply withdraws his presence. A weak man argues frantically for his value, while a strong man calmly withdraws his investment and access. A weak man begs for clarity, while a strong man remains still, observes behavior, and lets reality reveal itself. The weak man tries to control the woman's actions, but the strong man controls his own attention, his own energy, and his own devotion, which is the dividing line most men never cross because they are still trying to win the text back, the apology, or the reassurance. But the real question you must ask yourself in the mirror tonight is why you abandoned yourself the moment the outside world changed, and why your peace of mind became entirely dependent on her behavior. To build an inner kingdom that cannot be shaken, you must understand emotional alchemy instead of believing the lie that you must become a numb, robotic, unfeeling statue who pretends he does not care when he is bleeding inside. The truly powerful man feels everything: the burning heat of desire, the sharp sting of rejection, and the heavy weight of loneliness. But the secret is that he feels everything, yet obeys nothing blindly, because he does not suppress the energy, he transforms it. He is an alchemist who turns his raw internal emotions into gold, channeling intense desire into his training, refining white-hot anger into operational clarity, and turning the void of loneliness into the sacred forge of solitude. This brings us to the ultimate fuel of the masculine alchemist, which is his life force, his sexual energy, and the disciplined practice of semen retention. In the modern landscape, sexual energy is treated like garbage that is bought, sold, traded, and discarded for a 5-second hit of dopamine, meaning men empty themselves constantly into screens and casual encounters, and then wonder why they feel hollow, with no drive, no assertiveness, and no presence. Semen retention is the baseline foundation of self-command, because your vital energy is the biological blueprint designed to build empires and push through brick walls. So when you constantly release it without purpose, you are literally flushing your ambition and focus down the drain for a moment of sedation. When a man retains his vital energy, a psychological and spiritual quickening begins to build. The nervous system wakes up, the fog begins to clear, and the passive boy who just wants comfort begins to starve as the sleeping warrior takes over. The world wants you empty, because an empty man is easy to manage and easily pacified by cheap entertainment, meaning he will accept a mediocre life because he lacks the biological fuel required to fight for a better one. When you control your sexual energy, you make an ironclad declaration to your own subconscious mind that you are no longer governed by your lowest impulses and that you are the absolute ruler of this temple. This is where the direct correlation between self-command and semen retention becomes undeniable, because retention acts as the exact anchor that keeps you locked into the process when the brutal storms of life hit. The process of self-improvement requires you to show up at the gym when your muscles ache, to stare at a laptop when your mind wants to sleep, and to stay silent when someone insults you. So how can you possibly expect to hold your frame when a woman tests you, or when your business is failing if you cannot even hold your frame against a temporary urge in your bedroom? Your sexual energy is the highest hurdle, meaning if you can conquer that urge, look at the burning fire of lust, feel its immense power, and calmly choose to sit with it without reacting, then absolutely nothing else out there can destabilize you. When a man is empty and constantly losing his seed, his nervous system is depleted of dopamine, meaning he approaches a woman from a place of absolute hunger, needing her touch and validation just to feel whole, which acts as an immediate repellent to true masculine authority. But when a man is retaining, he enters the room chemically and energetically whole within himself, meaning he does not look at a woman with the desperate eyes of a starving beggar, but looks at the world from a position of overflowing power. Because he doesn't need her to regulate his nervous system, her emotional waves no longer have the power to tip his boat, so if she pulls away, he doesn't collapse or chase, and if she tests him, he doesn't scramble or get defensive, because his internal wellspring is entirely intact. Retention builds an energetic shield around your focus and creates a gravity where you stop leaking your presence, meaning you no longer look around the room asking if you matter, because you already know your worth through hard biological daily evidence of your own discipline. You have survived the discomfort of your own urges without reaching for sedation, and that survival breeds a terrifyingly quiet form of confidence that cannot be bought or shaken. Understand this fundamental law of human psychology. Every single day, with every small choice you make, you are actively training either self-command or self-abandonment. And there is absolutely no neutral ground or taking a day off from building your character. Every single time you know you should walk away from a toxic situation, but choose to chase because your loneliness gets the better of you. Or every time you start over-explaining and rationalizing your worth to someone who doesn't care, you are training self-abandonment. Every single time you open that browser in the dark, surrender to a pixelated fantasy, and release your vital energy into a piece of plastic, you send a devastating message to your own nervous system that your promises mean nothing, that your long-term goals are worth less than a 5-second hit of pleasure, and that you cannot be trusted. Then men sit around wondering why they have low self-esteem, feeling anxious, insecure, and uncertain when they have to lead, completely forgetting that confidence is simply the cumulative memory of keeping your word to yourself, not folding when the pressure mounted, and choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. When you practice semen retention, you execute the ultimate daily vote for self-command, adding concrete evidence to the ledger of your own self-trust, until your subconscious begins to realize that you can handle discomfort, and that you are a truly dangerous man. You become dangerous to the matrix because you cannot be easily bought, seduced by a pretty face, manipulated by someone withholding affection, or dragged into petty dramatic arguments, turning you into a sovereign force that no longer leaks power through need, desperation, and approval seeking. You stop looking for external saviors because you realize that if your inner kingdom is in a state of absolute disorder, no amount of money, no level of status, and no woman on this earth can ever save you. The hero's journey is completely unglamorous because pop culture has lied to you, making you think it is about going out into the world, swinging a sword, and slaying external dragons for the applause of the crowd, when the real dragon is actually sitting right inside your own chest. The true dragon is that lazy, terrified part of you that would rather be comfortable than be free, that would gladly trade your grand future for a temporary emotional hit tonight, and that would rather be chosen by a woman than be chosen by his own soul. Until that internal dragon is faced, named, and brought under your absolute command, all your talk about masculinity, discipline, and power is just a decorative costume, an aesthetic, and a beautifully polished suit of armor with a completely hollow, brittle spine underneath. We live in a world of modern men who want the crown without the initiation, the unwavering confidence without the daily agonizing discipline, the respect from the world without holding themselves to standards, and the deep intimacy without achieving self-mastery first. They want the throne, but they are entirely terrified of the descent, failing to realize that you do not become a king by just consuming motivational videos or reading quotes, but by consistently meeting, looking in the eye, and conquering the parts of yourself that you have spent your entire life trying to avoid. That is why real solitude, your daily routine, the food you put in your body, the environment you cultivate, the habits you protect, and the people you give your precious attention to matter beyond all measure. The weak man uses his desire to chase, to bleed himself dry, and to beg for scraps from the table of life, while the strong man takes that exact same desire, locks it deep within his core, builds a fire under it, and uses it to forge an empire. The weak man uses his emotional pain as a convenient excuse to collapse, fold, and turn to addiction, while the strong man uses his pain as a harsh, beautiful alarm clock to awaken his spirit. Stop trying to manage, manipulate, and control every moving part outside of your window. Let go of the need to control how people perceive you, and return home to the only kingdom you were ever truly granted responsibility over from the moment you drew your first breath to the moment you draw your last. Dominate your body, your mind, your actions, your attention, your sexual energy, your standards, your mission, and your response, because that is your domain, your fortress, and your absolute sovereignty. So build the inner kingdom, stand tall in your truth, and never ever abandon yourself again.